Hi, I'm Margie Mears, Senior Associate with Mathis Consulting, North Carolina's premier energy code education company. I'm here today to tell you about a unique opportunity you have to shape national energy policy, to make America more energy efficient. North Carolina has emerged as a leader in energy efficiency standards, and now state and local government employees can assure that the nation follows our lead in improving the whole country's energy conservation code. I want you to understand why you and your staff will want to be in Charlotte starting October 27th to cast critical votes at the International Code Council's final action hearings. This brief presentation will explain how national building codes are developed and why your participation is essential. The ICC, or International Code Council, is the organization responsible for developing our nation's building codes, including our energy conservation code. They rely on you, public servants, to make the final votes on these critical model codes. In October, North Carolina will be hosting the final votes on the International Energy Conservation Code, or the IECC. As the host of this important event, North Carolina officials have an added responsibility to be present and to vote, thus shaping the future of our nation's energy efficiency policy. North Carolina is a leader in this. We've already taken steps to make our own building codes more energy efficient. The new North Carolina Energy Conservation Code is slated to deliver up to 30% improvement in efficiency over the current code. In a moment, I'll explain why improving the energy efficiency of our buildings is so important. But for now, I want you to understand that even though North Carolina has already acted, it is in our best interest for the national code to be as good, if not better, than the North Carolina code. Why is energy efficiency so important? Well, let's look first at what we call energy megatrends. We know that energy demand is increasing worldwide, that there are multiple supply challenges, the current catastrophe in the Gulf being but one example. And we have peak power concerns. Power outages occur at the times of greatest demand, like the hottest summer days. Of course, there are national security issues because we import much of our energy, and much of those imports come from countries that are not always our allies. It's a great irony that every time we fill up our gas tanks, we could be supporting the very terrorists we're fighting. America needs to rely on itself, because this is also an economic security issue. We don't want the supply and therefore the cost of critical energy resources to be in the hands of our enemies. Don't we want it in our own hands? Given these megatrends, what is the path to a more secure energy future? Well, let's remember, buildings use 40% of the energy we produce. This is the largest sector. It's not the transportation sector nor the industrial sector. It's the buildings we live, work, and shop in. Look at this trend diagram. The U.S. appetite for electricity has almost doubled since 1980. And granted, we have a lot more gadgets and power cords creating what we call plug load, but the real culprit is air conditioning. By making our buildings more energy efficient, we not only make heating them easier and less expensive, but we also save energy during the critical summer days. We need enough electricity production capacity to meet that peak demand when we're locked in a heat wave. And making our buildings more efficient will lower that demand. The U.S. Department of Energy says that a 30% improvement in U.S. building efficiency would reduce energy bills by $75 billion over 15 years and eliminate the need for scores of power plants. Remember, electricity comes from fossil fuels. It is by definition a finite resource. Some believe we've already passed the peak of oil production. What we know for sure is that mining or pumping fossil fuels will continue to be more expensive, more difficult, and therefore more dangerous for us all. We need to develop new energy sources, and first among them should be energy efficiency. Finally, we need to consider pollution. Buildings are responsible for over half of our nation's carbon emissions. Your house pollutes twice as much as your car. You just don't see it because it happens down at the power plant. So whatever your concern about energy is, this is not an issue that need divide us. Energy efficiency is not a blue issue or a red issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue. I grew up in an America that valued efficiency. I was taught, waste not, want not. And that sounds like the foundation of a strong national energy policy. It's time for energy efficiency to be America's first fuel. Now, I've already mentioned that North Carolina has been showing leadership in this area. North Carolina has developed an energy code that is 30% more efficient than the current code. We're ahead of most of the country, in part because we recognize that we have these serious energy and peak power problems. Annually, we spend $1.6 billion for fuel to generate electricity, and we still don't generate enough to meet our needs. At peak times, we buy electricity at a premium price from utilities in other states. And we live in a state that has a growing population, 16% annual growth. Models say that between 2000 and 2030, 4 million people will move to North Carolina. That's the entire population of the state of South Carolina. Even in this bad economy, we are growing, and so is our energy demand. Because North Carolina has shown leadership, the votes for these national codes are even more important to us, because the cost of energy nationally affects us, and the impacts of pollution and water consumption for power generation don't recognize state lines. Also, we have a strong manufacturing base in energy efficiency building supplies. We have insulation manufacturers and window manufacturers and other companies. We're the home of one of the premier lighting technology companies, and there's tremendous savings of energy that can be gained from better lighting. So how did North Carolina get 30% better? Well, the same way the nation will, by picking the low-hanging fruit, by making sure that we require better air sealing, a little bit more insulation, better windows that prevent heat buildup, better lighting, properly sizing our heating and air conditioning units, and sealing the ductwork. Leaky ductwork wastes a tremendous amount of energy. A study found that in some homes, up to 50% of the air was leaking out of the ductwork. Imagine that. Consider your last electric bill. What if 50% of that was being spent air conditioning the outdoors? Making our buildings this much more efficient is about employing techniques that we know work. It is critical that we plug the holes in the ship. So, what is 30% worth? Well, we did an economic analysis on the North Carolina Code and discovered that the average upfront cost would be about $2,400 and the benefit about $400 a year in energy savings. That's a payback period of less than 5 years. The average age of a single-family home today is 80 years. But the need for new housing is still there. The National Home Builders Association says that half the homes we will need by 2030 haven't been built yet. So when you consider that in less than 5 years, the savings would pay for the improvements that could go on saving for a century, why wouldn't you do it? Especially considering the fact that you'll save money from the beginning because of the mortgage payment. We also need to consider who's hurt most by these costs. At the upper end of the housing market, energy efficiency is already becoming the norm. The Energy Star program has been a great success in North Carolina. Wealthier home buyers are demanding energy efficiency. Raising the minimum standards protects those who can least afford to be wasteful. Low-income families and the elderly on fixed income spend up to 25% of their income on their utility bills. And the inability to pay energy bills is a major factor in home foreclosure. So that brings me to the opportunity that is before us. The final action hearings of the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code will be held in Charlotte October 27th through November 1st. And ICC governmental members will vote to establish the next model code for our country. This diagram describes the process of developing a new code. In brief, anyone can propose a change to the code, and that proposal follows this process of hearings and public comment until it gets to the final vote. In Charlotte, starting on October 27th, the final vote on the Energy Conservation Code will be taken. And remember, what is the code? It's the least safe, least strong, least energy efficient building allowed by law. Building codes date back to the time of the Babylonians. Energy conservation codes date back to the 1970s because society has realized We can't afford to waste energy anymore. Now, let's talk about the proposals that will be heard and the votes and who can vote and all that stuff. Traditionally, ICC votes have been dominated by building inspectors, code officials, firefighters. But the voting is open to any public official involved in public health, safety, and welfare. When it comes to energy conservation, this could include sustainability coordinators, planning departments, and others. The only requirement is that the community or department being represented is also a member of the ICC. The proposals that will be voted on by only the individuals in the room. There's no absentee ballots at the ICC. It's democracy at the finest. Those who care enough to participate set the course. The number of delegates a community or department can have depends on the population served, as does the cost. If you look at this chart, you can determine the cost of annual dues to ICC and the delegation size your community can have, based on your population. The proposals that will be considered in Charlotte will run the gamut. Some will be business as usual efforts to roll back the code. Some will be steps in the right direction. And 2 comprehensive packages will take the national code to 30% or better. So, how efficient will the 2012 IECC be? Will it be 20% more efficient? 30% more efficient? Will it be as good as the North Carolina code? That's what's interesting to me. These decisions will be made by those who show up in Charlotte, and that's why North Carolina has such a great opportunity to lead. For all its complexity, the message here is pretty simple. Register now with the ICC. If you're not already a member, please join. Maximize your delegation. Make sure that the right names are registered with ICC. Identify a lead contact. Commit to sending your full delegation, whether it's 4, 8, or 12. Schedule the time to attend now and secure your travel budgets. There's support out there. Both the North Carolina Building Inspectors Association and Mathis Consulting stand ready to help. We have information that you need about scholarships, about the voting process, and ultimately about the individual proposals that will be considered. So we're ready. We're ready to help. Remember that these decisions impact jobs. Energy efficiency is a job creator. It's good for the North Carolina economy and our manufacturers. It's about housing that our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will live in. It's about the offices we work in, about making them more economical and more comfortable, because that's what happens if they're designed and built with energy efficiency in mind. And we'll need fewer power plants, making renewable energy sources even more viable. And hopefully we can stabilize energy prices by stabilizing energy loads. To get help, go to the North Carolina Building Inspectors Association website. They'll have specific dates on parts of the hearing, they'll have scholarship information and connections to other things there. So let me just recap the action items one more time. Please, commit to going. Get registered with the ICC. Maximize your delegation size. Submit your requests for travel scholarships now. And give your voters direction. Make sure folks understand that we can easily improve the code by 30% or more. I want to thank you for your time today and your willingness to help set the nation's energy policy on the right trajectory. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Charlotte. Please contact us if we can help.